Will Liverpool sign a midfielder? That is the question on everybody's mind. Who should you be picking in your FPL when it comes to the Liverpool players this upcoming week against Bournemouth? And which one realistic signing are the LFC Transfer Room contributors picking to choose for Liverpool? All this and more on this week's LFC Transfer Room podcast. The podcast brought to you by LFC Transfer Room. Hello, everybody, and I am Richie. Welcome to another edition of The Room, the podcast brought to you by LFC Transfer Room. I am one of your hosts today, and we're in a bit of a somber mood because last night we did the unthinkable and lost to Manchester United. We're not going to talk about that. I don't think anything else needs to be said. I'm sure it's been everywhere. You want to avoid it. So we're going to get on to transfer news instead, as we always do. We're not going to dwell too much on the game because onwards and upwards. Alex, apart from the game aside, how are you?
Certainly a lot more busy. It seems like now this could be the busiest, our transfer window's been since obviously we signed Nunes. So things could start heating up, and hopefully they do in terms of business. So I'm good apart from the result.
And over to Rigo. How are you today?
Doing well, all things considered. Yeah, it's been a somber mood to say the least. Just kind of trying to stay off social media channels, but it's hard, But otherwise, doing well. Thanks for checking.
Yeah, we have to check on each other when these results happen. They don't happen too often under the Klopp era, but when they do, it is heartbreaking. Let's talk about the transfer roundup. Liverpool may stick to their guns in regard to their midfield options this summer. They can take pride in the fact, and do take pride in the fact, that they don't sign players for the sake of it, and they point to past successes in terms of wanting the right man to be available. That's from Neil Jones from Goal. Liverpool have decided not to re-enter the transfer market this summer to bolster their midfield department. That's from The Athletic's James Pearce. More bad news. Real Madrid are interested in Borussia Dortmund's Jude Bellingham for next summer. That's from The Athletic, and Liverpool will be facing competition from them and Manchester City if they want to sign the 19-year-old. Naby Keita's latest injury is a genuine one, and there is real concern about the severity of it, and that comes from various outlets, including Jurgen Klopp himself. Some good news. Ecuadorian outlet Studio Football has claimed that Manchester United, I know we said we wouldn't talk about them, but they do feed into this story, made a firm offer for Moises Caicedo, the Brighton midfielder, but he didn't want to move to Old Trafford. And instead, apparently, Liverpool are preparing to make an offer. I wanted to end on some good news there. Alex, let's go over to you. Is there anything in there that took you by surprise, or do you think that actually what Neil Jones and James Pearce are saying is perhaps right?
I think it was all right up until yesterday against United. It was funny because after we lost, I thought, well, if there's anything that's going to push us to go and sign a midfielder, even out of just pressure from supporters, it was that loss yesterday. Maybe it was the tipping point to actually go and dip back into the market. The Keita thing, I'm sure Klopp quoted it. He fell just like that, injured. That sums up his time at Liverpool. He can't stay fit. I feel like he's had his chances now. Obviously, he's looking to extend still, so hopefully we can tie that down just to make a profit off him, and then hopefully bring someone in. But I think a lot of these, were done with business. They would have been concrete and they would have been spot on. But I feel like yesterday is just, it was such a pivotal moment. Perhaps now that sort of feeling about making a midfield sign and changes internally from Liverpool.
The Keita one is interesting because he was actually only injured for 8 games last season, which isn't actually a tremendous amount. He had 7 in a row from the end of October up until December, and then he had 1 from March to April. And the fact that he didn't find the rhythm, or he wasn't being played consistently, is what now would raise alarm bells, because it used to be injuries that kept him out of the squad. He didn't come on against Palace, and it looks almost as if that trust from Klopp has completely gone. We know that he's unhappy. We know that he's unsettled. So with Naby Keita, it's a massive conundrum now, because either Liverpool sign him, and it's a bit of a blind signing, if I'm honest, to extend him and hold his value, or he goes on a free next year and Klopp doesn't really rely on him this year. That's what it seems like. So that's a Naby Keita conundrum at the moment. Maybe bad timing that his injury actually happened when his agent spoke out. But, we have to trust Klopp on what the club say. He is going for scans today, but it doesn't look great. Rigo, over to you about the transfer roundup.
Everything bad except for that last bit of news as far as Moises Caicedo. That would be awfully great. obviously, if we were to bring him in, 20-year-old Ecuadorian, just goes after the ball, great tackling machine, great getter of the ball. Definitely needed for us, especially after yesterday's performance and the lack of athleticism, speed, and just fire from our veterans at that midfield. That would be great. Highly doubtful. Just again, from all the bit of news from your James Pierce, your Neil Jones, et cetera, saying that we're done. And again, from our history as far as getting deals done ahead of time and betting them in as soon as possible, I kind of feel like we're beating a dead horse here as far as the transfers. But I certainly hope after yesterday's collapse and the absolute no showing of the midfield that it would prompt us to make a move. I feel it's necessary. We can't put the pressure not only on the youngsters, but on these aged veterans with a lot of miles on their legs to carry us forward. If you do a comparison between the top 6 midfields and ours, I kind of feel we're at the bottom of that tier, and that's quite unfortunate.
Manchester United outran us yesterday, and that doesn't happen very often. You know, Manchester United outrunning any team, let alone a Liverpool team getting outrun. It doesn't happen very often. It does feel like we need to dip in to the market. But let me take you back to July, because Jurgen Klopp was asked this question: do you need midfield reinforcements? Do you need to improve your midfield? And Klopp, being the loyalist to all of these players that he is, listed 9 players, and he said, now you tell me where I need to improve. So going into this season, Klopp didn't feel like he needed to improve these players, and that's fine if Klopp feels that. But to now, yes, injuries are massive. Like, and again, we've been hit again. It always seems to happen. It was a centre-back issue a couple of years ago. But for the optimist amongst us, you will remember we did sign 2 centre-backs on transfer deadline day in January, in Ozan Kabak, who came in and played, and Ben Davies, who's still waiting for his first actual appearance for Liverpool. But it's a little bit naive to think the likes of Oxlade-Chamberlain, Thiago, Keita, Fabinho still picks up soft tissue injuries, Henderson, Milner are not going to get injured at some point during that season. So yes, we might have 9 midfielders, but they're not midfielders who are readily available at any time, at any one moment, any consistent moment even as well. So, you know, it's one of those that, yes, we have 9 midfielders, and on paper they're quality, but it feels like they're not available. I mean, what are your expectations? I'm not talking about your wants. You know, we all want a midfielder. And if we're being greedy, we could say we want another wide player. What are your expectations? What do you expect from Liverpool? Rigo, I'm going to go over to you. What do you expect from Liverpool over this next week?
Oh, man, I think I've just been conditioned to not expect a move, unfortunately. You know, we tend to make our moves early and bring these players in as soon as possible, as soon as we're able to make the transfer. And that we haven't yet is a sign that, they're going to go with what they have. And you listed out 9 players there, but again, you know, when you're taking a look at them, besides Fabinho, you're not really afraid of any of them coming to make a tackle, afraid of any of them going past you, being super creative. So I feel we are lacking in toughness, creativity, and athleticism in the midfield, but Klopp believes in them, and when they are healthy and clicking, they can do the job. It just seems that the guys who were you know, set up to rise if there was an opening, let's say Thiago getting hurt, which we kind of all expect, or Kate being hurt, which we kind of all expect, they're hurt at the same time as well. Like, this is the time that I would expect Curtis Jones to kind of make his mark and either cement himself or show what he's made of. And he was actually the first one out, you know, so it's real bad. I hope we do, but I certainly don't believe we will. What do you think, Alex?
I think Richie hit it on the head in terms of, firstly, you know, Klopp's stance on it. He's never going to be one of them managers who comes out and says we need transfers, because the whole midfield department's just going to hear that and take note and feel obviously surplus to requirements. I don't think that's how he plays, but I'm struggling to think of a midfielder who is always available in our midfield. Even, you know, Henderson, he has his problems. Fabinho starting to now, you know, increase the amount of injuries he gets. Thiago as well. You know, there are 3, you know, who you'd go to look for. That everyone picks up injuries throughout the season, every season. So yeah, we got depth, but it's not a readily available depth. So I think I can't see us signing anyone just because I'm a bit pessimistic when it comes to stuff like that. But I think if there was ever a time, this is the closest we're ever going to get to signing a midfielder this summer. But still, a part of me just thinks it's not going to happen.
Especially as well, Liverpool are so astute in the market, and we hail them for it as well. We say about their net spend is phenomenal, and the achievements that they've had throughout this net spend is phenomenal. It is unprecedented, but at the same time, there is money there to spend, and I genuinely believe that if we needed a player, now is the time to bring someone in. And yes, we might have to pay an extra 10, 20 million perhaps. But it has to be the right player. And this is what I wanted to bring us on to, really. If we are going to sign the right player, we put it onto Twitter Universe earlier, and I've asked all the LFC transfer room contributors as well to pick a choice. Who would their realistic choice be? Now, it had to be a realistic choice. So I'm going to list off some of them. I know that Alex Rigo and myself have chosen different ones. So these are some of the honourable mentions. Jacob Ramsey, Yuri Tielemans, Kalidou Kone, Leandro Paredes, Moise Caicedo, who we mentioned earlier, James Maddison, Husam Ayor, Lovro Maya, amongst other suggestions too. There's a good 8 or 9 players there that people have suggested, throughout. But I did ignore Jude Bellingham and Nicolo Barella shouts because they don't fit the bill of being realistic. One of which is quoted today, Borussia Dortmund actually now want 146 million for Jude Bellingham, which is obviously not going to happen. And Barella does not want to leave Italy. So they're 2 unrealistic shouts, really. We've also going to add 3 of our own. Okay, so thank you to all of those who contributed. Thank you for those. There's some really good shouts in there. But we're also going to, put our own in too, just maybe to say there could be options about that, maybe that Liverpool can delve into the market and be a little bit astute. Alex, I'm going to go over to you first. And please tell us who realistically you think Liverpool could/should sign over this next week.
So based off reports today, my target would be Federico Valverde from Madrid. Reports from El Debate and Madrid Universal say that there was a €70 million bid from an anonymous either top 6 Premier League side or Newcastle. So someone reportedly has gone in for him. They've obviously signed Tchouaméni, who we were after for a while this summer. Camavinga's obviously he looks like he's going to get more minutes. Ancelotti's a big fan of him. And another thing is using him right mid when he's such a good midfielder. It doesn't fill you with it's not the best sign, even though Madrid are great midfielders. But the player who usually gets shifted usually is the one who, if anyone, will be surplus to requirements by the club, unless his versatility is that good. But I think he'd be a phenomenal pickup. I've done this, in hoping that he'd fit into a 3 in midfield because I don't see Klopp changing his system now. So I think he brings great thrust. He progressive carries per 90 or 8.5 free per game, and I think that's something we seriously lack. Henderson, Thiago, Fabinho, none of them are picking it up and driving at defenders, and he does that at a 98 percentile. So he's not only getting the ball up and he's got the guts to try and drive at midfields and defences, but he also does it very successfully as well. He 2.89 shot creating actions again per 90. I don't think we have many midfielders who force moments or passes that create shots. I think that's the main thing we're crying out for, a bit of creativity, because we can get it from our full-backs, but there's no one in midfield who's given it in abundance often. He 3 progressive passes again per game, 15 pressures. So he's ticking a lot of the boxes for Liverpool of, what a Klopp midfielder needs. But I just think he can do both, fit into what a Klopp system is, but also give Liverpool fans what they really need, and that's thrust and that's creativity going forward. So I think, with how it's going in Madrid and looking at Bellingham, like you've just said a minute ago, I can see them honestly, shifting him aside just to try and fit the new toys in that come into the window next season and this season as well. So for me, that'd be my shout, yeah.
It's they've also just now had a nice £70 million from Manchester United to fund their Bellingham deal. So perhaps a Fede Valverde bid as well wouldn't go amiss, and then they're essentially getting Bellingham on a free. So it's certainly one to look at. Rigo.
I'd love Valverde. Sign me up for that one. Option A, I'd take it any day of the week. Um, for my player, the player I'd like to bring in, and realistic being shouted out by numerous Premier League squads interested in him, would be Lucas Paquette from the Ligue 1, from Lyon. As far as what he can offer and bring to the table, he's 24, about to be 25, Brazilian left footer. As far as his stats are concerned, he pretty much checks every box in the top midfielder, from creativity to defensively. Creatively, he scored 9 goals last season with 6 assists. And as far as passes attempted, in the 89th percentile, dribbles completed 84th percentile, and the shot creating actions 3.9 per 90. That would put him in the 73rd percentile. That's offering a lot more than what we currently have from midfield. And if we want to talk about defense, now this is where I think he stands out above what we currently have even more. As far as pressures applied per 90, he's at 23.1, which puts him at 95th percentile in comparison to the top 5 leagues in versus midfielders. And in tackles, he's almost at 3 tackles a game at 2.77. So that's 99th percentile. I think he offers a lot creatively as well as defensively. I think his bonding time would be expedited, just considering he's used to communicating with Fabinho on the Brazilian national team. Thiago obviously speaks Portuguese as well. So I think letting him in wouldn't take that long. His player profile matches exactly to what we would want from a midfielder. And I think he could combine either on the right side, middle, or left side for us, and even in more of a 10 role if we were to switch formation. So that would be my shout. It seems a realistic transfer at this point, considering other squads are in for him, and we could probably get him under 50 million pounds for the transfer. His wages are outrageously low at over 50,000 per week pounds, so we can easily double that and bring him in. So that would be my shot.
Liverpool certainly lack a dynamic and progressive midfielder. I think you two have identified those talents there. And Paquette will be really interesting, actually, because a lot of clubs are in for him. Like, I think Newcastle perhaps favourites to sign him at the moment. And it'll be really interesting to see if he can come and do what he's done in Ligue 1 in the Premier League as well. I've gone slightly more conservative in Luka Sucic. I really wanted to honourable mention for my part Dominic Szoboszlai, but he moved to RB Leipzig last summer. Notoriously difficult to deal with, Leipzig, especially this late in the window. So I didn't feel it was quite a realistic one, but he's an absolute player. He's someone who I'd love to see at Liverpool. So I went for Luka Sucic, and he's a 19-year-old, already a regular for the Austrian champions RB Salzburg. He managed 44 appearances last season, and he had 11 goals as well. And that's really where Liverpool lack goals in that midfield. Not only would Liverpool be able to attract Luka Sucic, it would also come at a significantly reduced price in comparison to one Jude Bellingham. Dortmund are obviously demanding, that 146 I mentioned earlier, whereas Salzburg would be looking for around about £30 million for Luka Sucic. Liverpool have a great relationship with Salzburg and Leipzig. We've seen, that the Liverpool links throughout: Mane, Keita, Konate, and obviously the latest one, Konate. So being Konate. So they've got a good relationship, a strong relationship with them. Although this one originally was about waiting. Luka Sucic had a very good 6 months in the back end of last season in Austria. And that probably won't be enough to pick Sucic as a Bellingham alternative, but needs must at this point, and he is one for the future. As I mentioned, he's 19 years old and he is progressive. Bellingham is just about as perfect fit for Liverpool as you could get, and for that reason, Sucic does seem a bit of a downgrade. But Sucic this summer, hopefully Bellingham next summer. That's really where Liverpool need to be looking. If we're going to get Bellingham next summer, we need someone still for now, and it's not a stopgap. I think a few of the names that I mentioned might have been stopgaps, but Sucic could be one for the future too. I'm going to run down a couple of numbers too. He can effectively play in the central midfield position. He's played there 44 times, but he can also play central attacking midfield too, so a little bit higher up, maybe behind Darwin Nunez. He's played there 25 times as well. His pressures, Liverpool Gengen pressing, although not so much against Manchester United, 74th percentile, and Salzburg don't play a high pressing system, so he does well in that. This is the one that I'm interested in, this shot creating actions. So anything that he does which leads to a shot. So whether it's a tackle, whether it's a pass, whether it's a free ball, whether it's a cross, he finds himself in the 86th percentile. And again, that's creative. That means he's creative. What he does, he leads, his build-up play leads to shots. His shot per 90 is in the 90th percentile too. So he's a high volume shot taker. We haven't had anyone in that midfield who does that since Philippe Coutinho, and we never replaced him. Now, I get that Liverpool's midfield is about industry and it's about having an engine, and it's about being the legs for that front three. But yesterday and this season, we have seen that we are desperate for somebody to take a little bit of responsibility in midfield when it comes to not just creating, but also perhaps, scoring those goals too. Blocks, considering he's quite attacking, he finds himself in the 66th percentile, so he can do a defensive job too. And we know that Klopp asks that for his midfielders. Progressive passes quite low. Actually, I thought it might be higher. He's in the 60th percentile for progressive passes. But again, he's a midfielder who goes sideways quite a bit, and then will only pass forwards when he needs to. So again, he's that build-up player, and then he'll find that space. He's a conservative pick for me because I think at the moment that's what Liverpool are looking at. I cannot see even a James Maddison coming through. I think that's far too high profile for the end of this window. I think even a Jacob Ramsey or ridiculously so, a Tielemans. Leicester need the cash. I saw place, things that he's rumoured for 25 million or less. I still don't think Liverpool will go in for players like that. I think Liverpool would want a 19, 20, 21-year-old who can develop and perhaps bolster that midfield. And that's what Liverpool need right now. So listen, Julian Ward, if you're listening, we've broken down 3. We've added another 8 or 9 that the Twitter universe and our contributors have given us. There's a few midfielders there. Let us know in the chat which ones you would also pick. Please make sure that they are realistic, though. As we wind down and away slightly from transfers, we do have a new feature, and that is where myself, Alex, and Rigo are going to pick a Liverpool player every week who you should definitely have in your fantasy Premier League team. Now, I was knocked off the top spot this week in our mini league in the Liverpool Transfer Room mini league, and I'm probably not the best one to take advice from because of that. But we are all going to pick a player, and again, it has to be a Liverpool player, and you have to explain the reasons why. And this is the difficult bit: we can't all pick the same. So we're going to give you a little bit of variety too. So, Rigo, I'm going to come to you first. You get first pick this week, and then Alex next week. Who would you pick? You have to have this player to all of our listeners in your FPL this week against Bournemouth.
At this point, I would have to go with Lucho Diaz as far as the pick. He seems to be the one player on Liverpool who all 3 matches has just been giving it his all, back and forth down that flank, going everywhere. He's been all over the field trying to make something happen. So that would be my pick for your FPL player of the week.
Man, if you like living life on the edge, this is the one to go for. I have a feeling, I've looked into the future. Fabio Carvalho is going to start on Saturday. He's going to score, and it's going to hush the midfield rumours, and everything's going to go quiet, and that'll be your answer to the midfield rumours. So, yeah, mine's going to be Fabio Carvalho. I've seen a lot saying he might get a start on Saturday because of his somewhat impressive display when he came on against United. But I've just got a feeling that he's going to come on, he's going to impress, and then that's going to be the reason we don't go and sign a midfielder, according to, the Klopp and whatever. So, yeah, that's my pick.
Yeah, he was a little spark yesterday as well, and obviously he, didn't quite get the assist for Salah's goal, but he certainly played a massive role in it. And it's an obvious pick. I was actually torn between these 2 players because one's less obvious in Trent Alexander-Arnold, but this boy will come good. And we're against Bournemouth who don't score too many goals. So there is that clean sheet in the back of my mind, and Trent could create something. And obviously we know like defenders who create, they get a lot of points. So Trent was in the back of my mind. But I think, you've just got to stick with Mohamed Salah. You know, he broke another record. He's now Liverpool's 8th top goal scorer. He's hunting down, you know, Robbie Fowler, etc. And even though he didn't have the best game, he still scored. And that's why you should have Salah in your team. I was debating actually this week. There were 3 good captain choices: Salah, Kane, and Gabriel Jesus. And I went for Salah, thankfully. And it turned out that was correct. I was on the 70th minute thinking, oh, I've made the wrong decision. But, you know, he's a penalty taker for Liverpool. He's going to score goals, and Bournemouth are frail. Bournemouth are weak. Liverpool are going to have a reaction. They need a reaction. They have to have a reaction after these first 3 games. And, you know, they need to come out, and Anfield needs to be roaring. So for me, I'm going to say Mohamed Salah. I think they're 3 great picks. I generally do. And I believe that Carvalho, to Liverpool's detriment, he might be the future. And Alex makes a really good point about if he can play midfield alongside Elliott with Fabi sitting there, that's pretty progressive, and that's pretty creative as well. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for listening. Please make sure that you check out the YouTube channel, that you subscribe, all down below on the Spotify, on the Apple, on TuneIn Radio. Make sure that you give us those 5 stars, because you've been absolutely phenomenal throughout this window. And we're sorry that we didn't bring you any more transfer news yet, but there is still time. Thank you for listening. This has been the Room Podcast, brought to you by LFC Transfer Room. As always, up the Reds, and take care of yourselves.